high-habitable man.
False. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
A new poll out today shows that a majority of Tennessee residents think the expulsions were wrong. And Tennessee is a very Republican state. It doesn't have a single statewide elected Democrat. But because this scheme in Tennessee was so brazen, and because voters who care about democracy mobilized so quickly, it was able to become a national story practically overnight, even amid a very busy news cycle. And because that mobilization was so quick, Representative Justin Jones didn't even miss a day of work. He was expelled and reinstated over the course of one weekend. And while what happened in Tennessee is particularly notable, it's far from the only example of conservative legislatures working quietly to roll democracy back. Just ask Justin Jones.
This is a historic day for Tennessee, but it may mark a very dark day for Tennessee because it will signal to the nation that there is no democracy in this state. It will signal to the nation that if it can happen here in Tennessee, it's coming to your state next. And that is why the nation is watching us, what we do here.
There's no other way to put it. Authoritarianism is ascendant in the Republican Party, and state legislatures are leading that charge. In Montana, state Republicans are trying to change how the elections are run, but only for the 2024 Senate race. They're trying to switch that race in particular to a top two primary system, which would effectively block any third-party candidates from the ballot. It's all part of a scheme to defeat the popular incumbent Democratic Senator Jon Tester. Republicans think he benefits from the current system, which allows third-party candidates to siphon votes from their nominees. And Montana's taken quite a few steps recently to roll back Democratic norms. In 2021, the Republican state legislature tried to end statewide elections of Supreme Court justices and instead have those justices elected by district, which of course means the legislature could gerrymander the map in support of conservatives. The same year, they also successfully changed the state's voter ID law to ban the use of student IDs from Montana colleges, making it that much more difficult for young people to participate in local democracy. According to one Republican legislator, her party changed the rules because, quote, college students tend to be liberal, end quote. I love when they say the quiet parts out loud.
Really? I mean, listen, everybody, Justin Pearson has been reinstated, okay? So Justin Jones was reinstated 2 days ago. Today in Memphis, Justin Pearson was reinstated. And all is not well. All is not well. The idea that we were able to see this, the idea that, people should have known that this was going on in the state laboratories of democracy, but they don't, is ideal for the people who really do want to get rid of democratic government. They want... look, the very rich people, and by them I mean a handful of billionaires, donor class billionaires, a handful of people are controlling so much of what's going on in this country, so much of it. And their goal, their end game is to have sort of an appearance of democracy like Russia does. Okay, Russia, it appears like they have elections, but it doesn't matter who votes or who doesn't vote. It matters who counts. And that's exactly the goal here. The goal here by design is what we see now, what we're experiencing now, the idea that you could elect somebody, you could actually go out and jump through all the hoops. Oh, your student ID is not real ID. Oh, your NRA card is, or your NRA ID is. You know what I'm saying? Like making it really, oh, no Dropbox this year. No, that was too easy. Oh, no mail-in ballots. No, we're not letting you mail them in. You have to come in, and you can only come in on one day. No, early voting, we're cutting it. We're cutting the amount of days. Early voting, no. Everything that they're doing is to give the appearance of a democracy that is still sort of somewhat functioning, but not really, in order for the very wealthy, the extreme people in this country to be the autocrats, to be in charge of everything, and you know what they'll sell you at the end, because right now what they're selling to the last remnants, the last remaining, stragglers, and that's all that the Republican Party is now. There's just a few stragglers left. I keep telling you that only 30% of this country is Republican, and of those 30%, you have about 25% of them who are dead enders. You have 25% of them who honestly, believe that there is a chance that they could prevail in a white ethno state, and this is what they're going to continue to show up for, and this is what they're going to continue to be incensed about. This is what they're continue to be angry about. And the very rich, billionaires, they're down with this plan. They're like, okay, we can parlay those stragglers, this little minority, we can parlay them into a minority majority. We can actually play on their resentment and fear. And we can, while they're being so resentful and so fearful, we can, pack the court, and we can do everything that we ever dreamed of doing. We cannot have any antitrust. We can own everything. We can own the people. And I don't know why these people think that the billionaires in the end aren't going to make them the slaves. I don't know. I don't know what they think is so special about their belief system or their resentment or their anger that is going to put them in charge of anything that the billionaires want to run, and they want to run it all. This is an autocracy. This is an increasingly autocratic society. This is by design, and the end is not going to be good for anybody, let alone the people who are being, exploited to get there. And that's really the scary part. That's the fear is the major cause of violence in this country, right? Fear is the major cause of violence. And that is why we're seeing what we're seeing. That is why we're seeing an ever increasing amount of violence in this country with the preferred weapon of the right wing. Okay. And they're even wearing little pins to tell you that's our preferred weapon. I swear to God, they're doing it. They're doing it. And the manufacturers of those particular weapons are U.S.-based manufacturers. These are their lobbyists. That's who's wearing the pin. It's the donor class again. It's an $11 billion industry in America, the manufacture of semi-automatic weapons. It is. It's an $11 billion industry, and they're going to protect it by hook or by crook. And so they're selling you this hatred and this fear and this resentment in order to move a product, and that product, is benign until it falls into the hands of resentful, angry, fearful people, and then it becomes a tool of war. And you've got billionaires telling you to go out and wage war. They're literally instructing you to do it. Why? Because the more war there is on the streets, the less they have oversight over what they're doing to take over elections. And you know what's really scary? Okay, in the end, it's going to come down to a Supreme Court case. And I'm not even talking about, the Supreme Court case that is, last night I told you at midnight there was a deadline to get a stay on this one idiot in Texas who, obviously doesn't understand states' rights. Has no clue, because this one guy in Amarillo has decided he's going to make law for the entirety of the United States, right? We went through that. Everybody understands that is bizarre and wrong, and it's just, it's hypocritical on his part to say, I'm going to make law for the entire United States of America, while the Supreme Court, which is totally conservative, said, well, we're deciding Roe, we're striking down Roe based on the states can choose states' rights, right? And so the whole thing is just, it's a plot. It's a scheme. And he had to find something, and he couldn't find anything. So he decided, well, I can't, let the states do it, because the states are doing it, and not enough states will do it, and the FDA is a federal agency. So I just need to make law for the entire United States of America, even though it's totally hypocritical and violative of everything that I believe in or everything that I think the law says, right? Okay, so we're waiting for that. They filed their brief last night. I read their brief. Their brief said exactly what we said to you yesterday in plain English. They have no standing. The statute of limitations is over. It was 6 years. And by the way, one guy in Amarillo isn't entitled to make law for the entire United States of America and strike down a federal agency. It just doesn't make any sense. Okay, so it's beyond that now. It's beyond. That's just a clue about where they're going. That's just a little glimpse into the larger scheme of things.
all things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
I'm looking at society today, and it's like I'm watching an X-Men movie with people that, when you watch the X-Men movies or Marvel comics, it's like we have mutants living among us on planet Earth. And, you know, some people don't like that, but that's a fact. We have people that live among us today on planet Earth that are happy to display themselves as if they were mutants from another planet. This is the planet Earth, where God created men, male, and women, female. I'm a proud Christian, conservative Republican. I'm not on the fence.
Okay, did you see that on the TV? No, you didn't see that on TV. You know why you didn't see that on TV? Because that's happening in the local state legislature in Florida. Okay, and you don't see your local state legislatures represented in national news, and you barely have local news. People barely have a half hour of local news. And when the local news deems it necessary and does a deep dive into what's going on in your state capital, people just tune out, or they just say, that's too difficult to understand. I don't get what's going on, until it's too late. And you see the expulsion for no good reason except that they did not like the position of 3 members of the state house in Tennessee on gun safety legislation. And because they're cowards, and because they have no good counter argument, and because they don't even want to bother with creating a good counter argument or entering into a debate, they decide, you know what, we'll just expel them. We have a supermajority. We can do it. And that's what they did. And, you know, finally, people started paying attention to what's going on in state houses. This guy from Florida, Barnaby Webster, was talking about a bathroom bill, gender dysphoria, and he was telling people that they were demons, they were imps, they were devils. I swear to God, this is what he called them. He called them every name in the book that you could possibly imagine, and then self-declared him the arbiter of all things Christian. Again, God created all of us in his image. So I look like this, and Brett looks like that, and this one looks like that, and that one looks like this. All created in God's image. So what gender was God? Shut up, Mr. Barnaby, whatever your name is. I mean, this is, but see, this is the kind of stoking. This is the kind of hate. This is the kind of resentment that billionaire donors and their lobbyists are paying to put before guys like him. They are saying, these are your talking points. This is what you do. We're going to introduce a bathroom bill in 32 states, okay? And the reason why you're against it is because it goes against God. All right, go. And that's what happened. So now we've got, not just an attack on, transgender people who suddenly we must do something about them. We must do something about them suddenly. Why? Because you need another distraction from what's really going on here, which is beyond gerrymandering. It's beyond taking away the drop boxes. It's beyond taking away early voting days. It's beyond taking away the actual number of voting machines in a library. We'll get to the libraries. Or in a school for you to vote upon. It's to make the lines longer than they have been. You see in Atlanta, when people lined up to vote, you saw those lines were 9 hours long. Some were 11 hours long, and people are determined, and they stood there, and they brought their water, and now they said, oh, you know what? No water for you. Try it again. This time in Atlanta, in the heat, without water. Try it this way. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just an endless thing. And in order to get away with it, they have to moralize. They have to stand on some pulpit somewhere and make it appear that God told them these things about that one and this one. I got news for you. God didn't tell him anything about that one and this one. God barely told him how to be a righteous human being. God barely told him about dignity and respect. God barely told him about do not judge lest ye be judged. He doesn't understand anything about the religion he claims to be a member of. That's kind of normal, but it's also creepy because it's a talking point. It's a talking point meant to play into people's fear and resentment of others. Once you otherize groups of people or a person or a religion or a race or a particular way of living your life, once you otherize, I don't care if it's liberals. We can talk about liberals just because it's probably a little less difficult to understand. But once you otherize liberals, or once you otherize Jews, or once you right, then it becomes so easy to take away their humanity. It takes away their ability to live, because they're not humans. They're something else. They're Satan's spawn, which is what this man actually referred to children in this state as. Now, he has since apologized, because even that, that was a bridge too far for some other Republicans who were handed the same talking points in the Florida state legislature. And they said, listen, I don't think you're demon spawn. I don't think that you're imps. I don't think that you're something out of a comic book, that Marvel create. I really wish you the best, and I hope that you get to live a full and free life. Well, it wasn't that big of him. That was one Republican responding to what this other Republican said about entire groups of children. And what they're trying to legislate is something we don't need, we don't want, we don't have to have. And that is a crime. It would be a crime, and it would be enforced at colleges, I swear to God, all educational institutions, hurricane shelters. So in the midst of a emergency, in the midst of your house being ripped apart, okay? And most people in this state are really looking for, if they have to go to a shelter, which is like the last possible thing that you would ever do, but if you had to, they want it to be pet friendly, okay? These are the fights we want to have in Florida about hurricane shelters. Can you just let my dog come? Because we learned how many people who can't bring their pets won't evacuate to the shelter. Well, they want people who evacuate to the shelter not only not to bring their pets, but they want them not to be able to use the bathroom in the shelter. They want to make that a punishable crime. They want it enforced in substance abuse centers here in Florida. They, if some kid has been so pilloried and so damaged and so otherized that they're trying to stop their pain by using addictive drugs, and then they realize that they're killing themselves and they would like some help and try to live again, and they go to a substance abuse place, they're going to be pilloried and bullied in the substance abuse place by virtue of this law. Swear to God, they'll make it a crime for them to use a bathroom in the substance abuse place. They want it healthcare facilities, so hospitals too. Hospitals. Public accommodations, which includes businesses open to the public. It includes, hotels and restaurants and gas stations and entertainment spaces like movie theaters and more. This is what they're spending their time on. This is what they're doing in Florida. Nobody cares about this, okay? Nobody. Our homeowners insurance has gone through the freaking roof. But this is what they're doing, because improving the homeowner insurance market would step on some billionaires.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Some of these stories go underreported because local news has been on the decline for years, slowly bled to death by a lack of funding, or raided for parts by venture capitalists.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff just flies under the radar. We all know when Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz say something ridiculous and offensive because Capitol Hill is full of reporters.
Right.
But what about when a Florida House Republican compares trans folks to mutants and demons like a representative named Webster Barnaby did just yesterday?
To all the folks that are in the audience that consider themselves gender dysphoria, cis, I don't know what all that means. I really don't know what all that means. I'm looking at society today, and it's like I'm watching an X-Men movie. It's like we have mutants living among us on planet Earth. The Lord rebuke you, Satan, and all of your demons and all of your imps will come and parade before us. That's right, I called you demons and imps.
That's some crazy stuff right there, but that kind of rhetoric is all over the place within these state Republican parties. Nearly every troubling trend in the creeping threat of right-wing authoritarianism in this country is spearheaded in Republican-led state houses. They get the least amount of attention, both from the media and from the voters. But the fight to save democracy will have to start at the state and local level.
So who is your state senator? Who is your House member? See what I mean? You probably know, if you live, in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district, that she's your House Republican in the federal government, but you don't know who your locals are. And that's by design, too. The venture capitalists come in and they suck all the cash out of these businesses, okay? And then they sell them off for parts. This is what happens to that's what happened to radio, and now it's happening to local news. It's been happening to local news for a period of years now. I lived through it happening to radio, and they were pronouncing us dead, at the beginning of their raid, because they knew that they could kill local radio, and they did. So if you get anything on the radio now, it's really Sirius XM. And if that giant corporation decides that you don't have a place there, then, screw you. You don't even get to go to the local anymore. You don't even get to sit in West Palm Beach and talk about West Palm Beach issues, or talk about the state legislature, or talk about the Attorney General of Florida, or talk about the Attorney General of Texas, who's under indictment for securities fraud and has been for 5 years, and nobody even knows it because there's no coverage of it anywhere, except on independent media like Free Speech TV, okay, which, obviously is, it's not on cable systems, okay? It's not.
Randy, it doesn't shock me that Webster there doesn't like X-Men mutants, because they are heroes. They stand for justice. They have a moral compass. And that dude, that is the face of evil right there.
Well, what's interesting is he said, I don't even know about this, dysmorphia, or this dysphoria and cis. He says he doesn't know anything about it, but he's going to legislate on it. That's the freaking scary part, and that's how you know these are talking points. These are not, held beliefs. This is not, he's just sitting there doing what he's told. Okay, read these talking points, go off on these people, say that they're the spawn of Satan, say that they're imps, say that they're demon, and he knows nothing about any of it. He doesn't know one thing about any of it, but he's going to legislate about it. He's going to put it, he's going to make a crime out of you being you doing you. He's going to make that a crime. I mean, honestly, and this is the march that we've been on for a really long time. And now it's accelerating. Now you could see it moving really, really fast. These autocratic measures. Why? Because, as I've told you, I can't even tell you how many times I've told you, because I don't even know. The gerrymandering that went on in every single district in this country literally created Republican majorities in places where there aren't Republican majorities. There are Democratic or independent majorities. Independents are people without a home in a lot of primary states, a lot of places. Like in Florida, you can't be an independent and vote in a primary, so you don't have a voice. You have nothing to say about who the two people are going to be. And then it's an electoral college situation. So you again have, you can vote, but you have to vote for somebody who isn't in your party. You have to vote for a Republican or a Democrat. You're not a Republican. You're not a Democrat. You're an independent. But you don't get to do that. You don't get to do that, because if you do that, you're throwing your vote away. Why? Because there's an electoral college that's going to give whoever the majority votes for all the electoral votes, okay? It's not going to be, a hybrid. It's not going to reflect anything it's not going to be a runoff. There's not going to be the top 3 vote getters. There's not going to be any of that. So we are literally gerrymandered out of our own voice in our own states, and no one even knows it. But this works really well for the billionaire class, for the elite class. This works really great when they want to be the autocrats of the future. And you know what they're going to end up selling you at the end? this is hysterical to me. They're going to end up at the end selling you the idea that you can become just like them. You can be billionaires just like them if you only worked really hard and you only pulled yourself up from your bootstraps, etc. You could be just like them. Except what they don't tell you is they inherited their freaking money. This is old money passed down. They're Nepo babies. Every one of them. They're Nepo babies, okay? And they don't want to tell you that. They don't want to, like Harlan Crow, he doesn't want to tell you who his daddy was. He doesn't want to tell you that he inherited this business. He doesn't want to tell Trump, he doesn't want to tell you who Fred was. He doesn't want to tell you that he inherited his daddy's business. You know, Junior, he doesn't want to tell you that he's going to inherit from his dad. You know, and they just want to sit there and tell you that you could be just like them if you just let them have their way with you. They will not enslave you. Oh, no. Oh, hell no. They will not impose their right-wing Opus Dei version of Catholicism on you, evangelical Christians. They will not be imposing their religious view of the world on you, but they will just be selling you the idea that you can work really, really hard and you could be just like them. If in 5 generations, one of your, unborn becomes born and becomes, rich, and then they pass it on to their kid and their kid does something with it, and then that kid passes it on to another kid, and he doesn't become addicted to, like a trank heroin or something like this, and, manages to live through it and gives it. I mean, it's so carefully crafted, this nonsense. And it's all to talk you out of your own pants, okay? It's all to talk you out of your dress. It's all to talk you out of your life. It is. It's all meant to make you believe that you need to give up democracy, that you need to give up the democratic way of life with a small d, that you need to not even vote anymore. And I'm telling you, the gerrymandering makes it so that your vote is so diluted that even if you thought you were in a blue district, now they've taken the 2 people in the blue district, maybe 3, who have the majority, and they've said, oh, there's 3 that they have the majority. So you know what? We'll take these 3 and we'll put 1 over here and 1 over there and 1 over there. Now you have no majority. So the minority wins because they've diluted you.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Okay, briefly, do you remember when the Texas legislators had to flee the state in order to get coverage of the voting restrictions that were going into place in the Texas legislature? And nobody would cover it. Nobody would cover the dilution of the ability to vote in Texas. And so a whole bunch of legislators had to get on a plane and go out of state to prevent them from having a caucus so they couldn't vote for those Texas restrictions on voting. Well, I mean, they had to come back eventually, and it did pass. It did pass. But this is what they had to do. These are the lengths that local, state legislators have to go to in order to get coverage for really evil, bad things that are in service to the donor class, right? And so this is Jasmine Crockett. She's now a representative for Texas in the House of Representatives, right? And she was saying this is exactly what they're doing. That's exactly why we have no local radio. That's exactly why we have no local television. There's no C-SPAN for state legislatures, right? And now all of a sudden we're like hyper alert to what is going on in state legislatures because places like Wisconsin were going to invoke an 1839 law that said that women couldn't have an abortion even if they were raped, even if they were the victim of incest, which, by the way, according to the Kaiser Family Foundation, this is crazy, states that have abortion bans at various early stages of pregnancy, like 6 weeks in Florida, with no exception for rape and no exception for incest, include Alabama, Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Kentucky, Louisiana, Mississippi, Missouri, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, West Virginia, and Wisconsin. And when Wisconsinites found out about this, they were like, are you kidding me? And they got a very surprising electoral outcome in Wisconsin, didn't they? That's only because people learned about it through national media, right? The same thing goes for the Texas legislature. Jasmine Crockett was, she jogged our memory about, what they had to do.
That's exactly what it's been. We could not get the coverage. Not that we were necessarily looking for coverage, but we want to make sure that our constituents are informed. Most people didn't even have an idea of who their state representatives were. They could tell you who their senators were, who their congresspeople were, but they couldn't tell you about the state reps. And they had no idea that when they were complaining about justice issues, they really needed to be talking to us. They had no idea that an abortion ban was going to be coming down. They had no idea that, what started off as a bathroom bill would then continue on and turn into anti-trans legislation. And they had no idea that the Republicans would be so desperate to bring about voter suppression in the state of Texas that we would flee the state and end up having warrants out for our arrest and really bring national attention to the issue.
Seriously, that is what is going on, and that's why the billionaire class decided that they were going to take over state legislatures. Now, how do they do that when there's not a majority of the people that agree with anything that they are for? When I just told you all those states that have no exception for rape and incest at early stages of pregnancy, when that was polled, 21,730 people were polled at the University of Pennsylvania's Penn program on opinion research and election studies, okay? And that's a huge survey, 21,000 people. Usually if the sample size is, 1,000 or around 1,000, they say that's a legitimate sample size, right? But this was a huge sample size, 21,730 people. And here's what they found. 86% of people in this country support these exceptions at early stages of pregnancy. 86% of people that were polled were asked, do you support exceptions for rape and incest in early stages of pregnancy in your state where there is none? And 86% of the respondents said, oh, yes, we do support these exceptions, okay? 94% were Democrat. 94% of Democrats agreed with these exceptions. 89% of independents agreed with having these exceptions. And 76% of Republicans agreed with having these exceptions. But that's not what happened, is it? No, because the more that they can control your economic future, the more that they can control, the courts, the more that they can control your ability to decide about your own life, the more they get into your business, the more they get up in your vagina, the more they get up in your penis, the more they get up in your family, the more they get up in your library, the more that they decide what you can read, what you can't read, the more that they say who has access to the internet and who doesn't have access to the internet, the more powerful they become. And that is what they're doing. Now, one of the guys that was interviewed last night as well, this was a great show, I have to say. Ali Velshi was the only person discussing any of this from the idea or from the proven fact that Republican operatives, Republican strategists, that the billionaire class has carefully planned all of this in service to an autocracy being the way America governs. Was Ali Velshi. The only person who covered it was him. Anyway, he had on Ben Wickler. Sorry, Ben. He had on Ben Wickler, who is the chairman of the Democratic Party in the state of Wisconsin. And he was saying how shocked everybody in Wisconsin was when they finally heard what was going on there with the 1839 law in the Supreme Court.
Absolutely. They're furious when they find out. But Republicans don't want them to find out. One of the stunning things about politics today is that when you just accurately describe what Republicans are trying to do in state houses in Wisconsin, across the country, voters initially think that it must be a lie. Because they can't imagine that anyone would try to get away with a power grab so brazen and extreme. In Wisconsin, we had the Supreme Court race. There were millions of dollars of ads. Eventually, it sank in for folks that Republicans were trying to, on the one hand, rip away their reproductive freedom, and on the other hand, smash democracy so badly that voters would have no ability to fight back against it. Their only path for voters to take back control over their own bodies, over their democracy, was to win the Supreme Court race, and that's exactly what they did by a landslide. But frankly, if it hadn't been for this opportunity, we would have been stuck in a doom loop that could have lasted for decades.
A doom loop. That's a great way to put it, right? What he didn't get a chance to explain to you is that already the Senate, which now has a supermajority in Wisconsin, is talking about impeaching her. Because this is the plan, is to remove people. You choose, and if the money delete, that's why $42 million was spent in Wisconsin. Did you hear what I just said? $42 million in Wisconsin on a elected Supreme Court justice's seat that's term limited. 10 years, okay? 10 years. And they still, the money delete spent $42 million trying to convince you that allowing them to take away your right to vote, your right to reproduce or not reproduce, your right to the size of your family, the right to, have medical attention when you have a fetal anomaly, or when you're raped, or when you're the victim of incest, or when you're a teenage boy is going to decide your future for you in Wisconsin. I mean, when people finally found out about it and realized how much money was being spent, like light bulbs went off over their heads and they were furious. They went, what do you mean? What do you mean this is what they're spending their money on? Why are they doing it? Because that doesn't make, sense in a democracy. The features of this plan, the features of this carefully crafted strategy by the moneyed elite in this country is to take away any checks and balances on executives, meaning the president, including the decentralization of elections, meaning elections are not going to be free and fair anymore. Elections are going to be given to partisan officials once they elect them through gerrymandering. And those elected officials will not have, or they'll have very minimal federal oversight and or regulation. The partisan gerrymandering of districts has already happened in 32 states. The overrepresentation of rural states that we have now in the United States Senate is self-evident, right? That you have a state with 40 million people in it, California, and that you have a state with 1 million people in it, Wyoming, and you get the same amount of senators. You get the same representation, okay? And they like it like this. And they also love the Electoral College, which helps them have overrepresentation in minimally, populated places. They do partisan appointments to the judiciary, which is what this last race was about in Wisconsin. Also, partisan appointments in the judiciary for, Mitch McConnell was a total evildoer here and packed the court with 3 people that lied during their confirmation hearing about Roe specifically. Okay, and then they have this Supreme Court case that's pending. I don't know who's paying attention to this, but it's called Moore v. Harper, okay? When we first started talking about Dobbs, that seemed like science fiction too, but it happened.
Mary had a little lamb.
We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Help is on the way.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
People are paying more and more attention these days, and they are trying to hide what they are doing up here.
The House Speaker downplayed those concerns.
I think what you have is you have a process where the sponsor of any legislation in the House, when they're standing up there, can request a roll call vote.
Chairman Dixie, you're recognized on your bill, 2489.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I start, I'd like to request a roll call vote.
I'm sorry, we won't be able to do that because we've already voted on the amendment.
Yet here in the House Local Government Committee, Vincent Dixie's request for a roll call vote was denied because, according to the chair, the committee had already voted to add a technical amendment to the bill. That bill, drafted by area high school students, would simply have required schools to inform 18-year-olds how they could register to vote.
So I asked for a roll call vote because I wanted people to see the obstacles that we face here on a daily basis.
In fact, the House rules also say a roll call vote shall be taken at the request of the sponsor of the bill or resolution under consideration prior to any vote. The Republicans reinterpret that as prior to any votes of any kind being taken.
The rules say you can ask for a roll call before any vote.
Before any vote is taken.
That's not what the rules say.
I would have to refer you to the clerk.
And when it came time to vote,
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No. So what did the students hear?
It sounded like yes. It sounded like the yays have it.
Noes have it.
This is what goes on every single day in state legislatures. That happened to be the state legislature in legislature in Tennessee. Okay, which we're now hyper alert to because they decided that the people voted and they didn't like the people's choice, so they were going to expel 2 members, black members, and keep the white one, keep Gloria. They finally did that report in Tennessee. And the people there were shocked and appalled to find out that there's so much cheating going on in the state house, and it's all by design. This is a strategy to push forward. That particular bill, the reason why I show you this one is because that particular bill was sponsored by high school students in the state of Tennessee. They asked if they could have permission to tell 18-year-olds in high school that they not only had the right to vote at 18, but how to do it, how they register to vote, and how they get a voter's registration. And the legislature in Tennessee, on the most feeble of acquiescence, on the most, basic, thing that they could say yes to, said no to it. They said no because they're trying to suppress voting. This is how we ended up where we are. The Republican leaders of this country, and they are the leaders of an ever shrinking group of people. They're the leaders of a sliver of us, okay? Of a minority of us. And that is why they gerrymander, and that is why they go after voting, and that is why they pull the drop boxes, and that is why they say voting by mail can only happen on this day or that day, or no, we're just going to do away with it, and you don't want to vote on paper, you want to vote into a machine. It's crazy, right? But they want to be in charge of the police powers of the government. They want to moralize our legislation. They want to moralize our laws. We are a nation of the laws of men, not a nation of a religious persuasion. Okay, that is the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. Okay, but they want to moralize the regulations. This is why they have us, talking about abortion and talking about bathrooms and talking about people that have always existed in the world, always, and still do everywhere around the world. There are gay people everywhere around the world. There are transgender people everywhere around the world. There are straight people everywhere around the world. There are women everywhere around the world. There are men, and everywhere around the world there's something in between. All of it, and God created every last bit of it. But they don't like that idea, so they want to legislate a different idea, their version of morality. And how many times have you heard that saying, you can't legislate morality? Because you can't. You can only make laws about willfully lying. You can only make laws about, whether we have a free country or we don't, whether freedom is for all or it's not. And we decided in 1860 that it was for all. And they don't like it. And so they want to change it. And how are they changing it? They're turning private citizens into vigilantes, into enforcement officers. They're militarizing the police. You come with a semi-automatic pistol, they'll come with a long gun. You come with a long gun, they'll come with a tank. You come with a tank, they'll come with a bazooka. On and on it's going to go. You can have drone strikes in your city before you know it. And the expulsion of defiant Democrats. That's just the cherry on the cake of the day. But what happens when they go too far? What happens when they drift into oblivion? What happens when they say, no exceptions for rape and incest in Florida, in Arizona, in Arkansas, in Louisiana, in Alabama, in Mississippi, in Missouri, in Oklahoma, in Ohio, in South Dakota, in Tennessee, in Texas, in West Virginia, Wisconsin. What happens? People suddenly wake up. And then they tell you that's a bad way to be. Being woke is bad. It's bad. And that's because when they see the polling that everybody can see and they understand that 76% of their own party doesn't appreciate these laws, are against these laws, then all of a sudden they become the leaders of an ever shrinking minority. Listen, it's not just me saying it, okay? There are so many political science and philosophy professors and, sociology professors at Harvard, at Stanford, at Yale, all across this country that are starting to weigh in and are trying to tell you what I've been telling you. So, you owe me $40,000, $50,000 per semester. What do I ask for? $895 a month. No, you owe me $50,000 a semester is what you owe me, because they are all trying to tell you this. Nicholas Stephanopoulos, he's a law professor at Harvard. He said, quote, the state policy outcomes are becoming more bimodal. What does that mean? Liberal or conservative, rather than centrist. In previous eras, the misalignment between the public policy and the public in modern American politics, where modern American politicians went very extreme, but the public wasn't that extreme, actually caused all kinds of outrage, caused all kinds of protest. And he said the only way to get out of it is to get the radical right the message that they have to moderate themselves. They have to do something because the people are coming. That's what this movement in Tennessee represents. And that's why what happened to the Tennessee 3 and what happened in Wisconsin just in these past weeks is so important to see and know. Activism actually works. Saying no to them actually produces a result. In Tennessee, Bill Lee, who is the governor of Tennessee, the right-wing radical governor of Tennessee, he sort of punted. I mean, he didn't do anything on the gun issue. He didn't do anything. But he said to the legislature through an executive order, okay, we have to moderate. We have to have red flag laws. I hope that we have enough people that agree with me. I hope that we do. To a completely Republican legislature, I hope that we have enough people who agree with me that, we've had a lot of death here in this state where we have no gun laws. We have none. We don't have universal background checks. We don't have red flag laws. We have permitless carry. We don't have safe storage rules. We don't have, any ability to keep guns out of the hands of people who are suffering with mental illness. Maybe we ought to do something.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
It is some of the most significant gun control legislation in years. The governor announcing today he will sign an executive order to strengthen background checks.
That's not legislation.
At the same time, he's proposed an order of protection law, essentially a red flag law. This is News 2 at 4. Thank you for watching. I'm Mark Kelly. State Capitol reporter Chris O'Brien was there for this big announcement today and joins us more on what the governor called a clear need for action. Chris?
Hey, Mark, good evening. You mentioned that order of protection law that would prevent people who pose a threat from purchasing any further firearms. The question now becomes, will the General Assembly pass it?
Right.
And what's arguably the biggest step Governor Bill Lee has ever taken to address gun violence, he announced he'd push the General Assembly for an order of protection law.
A person that has shown that they are a real threat to themselves or to others, that person, that individual should not have access to firearms.
We also signed an executive order today to require law enforcement to submit new criminal activity within 72 hours, while also calling on the TBI to examine background checks in Tennessee.
I certainly hope that there's bipartisan support sufficient to get this done.
House Democratic leadership blasted the plan, calling it a beguiled way to drum up support.
Yet again, you've got this governor with such completely failed leadership, again punning to someone else to solve the real problems.
House Democratic Caucus Chairman John Ray Clemens says he agrees with some of the ideas, but not the way the governor is proposing implementation.
If he wants us to do all the work and provide the only leadership in the state of Tennessee, that's great. That's fine. I'm more than happy to do it. We've been trying to do it for years.
I like this guy. John Ray Clemens. He was the guy that stood up on the Tennessee state floor and started screaming about how he was humiliated because they were expelling these two kids. Right? He said, "What is this? What do you do?" I mean, so you have very strong voices in the Tennessee legislature. You would never know it. You would never know it until now. So, what was I saying before the break? These radical right-wingers have got to moderate. They have got to move to the middle because they are literally losing everyone in their party except for the Proud Boys. And you know what's really creepy is like in Clackamas County in Oregon. In Clackamas County in Oregon, you chose a new vice chairman. His name's Daniel Tooze. He's a Proud Boy from Oregon City. Rick Riley, he's the head of the county chapter of Take Back America, which denies the results of the 2020 presidential election. He's your chairman. Okay, so you're literally picking militia guys to be the chairman of these parties because that is what's left for the Republican Party as far as leadership goes. In Oregon Public Broadcasting reported that in Central Oregon, I don't know if I'm going to butcher the name of your county, but it looks like Deschutes County. The local Republican Party chose a guy named Scott Stewart, who is a member of the county chapter of People's Rights, a nationwide network of militia groups and anti-government activists founded by Ammon Bundy. In Florida, we had the Republican Executive Committee taken over by Enrique Tarrio, who's on trial for conspiracy to commit I want to say tyranny, but insurrection. Okay, conspiracy to commit an insurrection. Honestly, they're picking the lowest of the low to be the chairman of these parties so that they can make these parties like non-competitive. You know what I mean? Like no pushback at all. I mean, they're just it is so sick and sad what is going on. And then when crime actually occurs, when you elect yourself militia guys and guys that are strapped and guys that are wearing long guns and guys that want to kill each other, and you say, oh, and by the way, permitless carry and no red flag laws, and we don't really report crime in this state until we get around to it. So 3 days could go by, 4 days can go by after your criminal arrest for violent activity against your wife or your children. So that's the time for you to go and get yourself a gun because, we're not really reporting it right away. And so there will be, and plus we don't really do background checks. So, but hurry up and do that before they demand moderation and we have to do a background check on you. But Republicans in states across the country are literally trying to criminalize things that aren't criminal, like going to the bathroom or getting an early abortion with a pill that's safe and effective versus electing themselves militia guys. And when these guys get violent, they're just going to point to it and they're going to say, see, you live in a violent, crime-infested place and you have to let us take over. You have to because you can't stop it anymore. You just can't. So, and then on top of it, they have vigilantes that are going to report people. Virginia's got a vigilante thing. Florida's got a vigilante thing. Texas has adopted a law with private citizens, empowering them to enforce restrictive policies that they disagree with, like teaching sex education or teaching CRT or getting an abortion or, doing a background check. I mean, they're literally doing it. They're going there. They're absolutely going there. And I'll tell you, somebody else who's worth quoting today. All of this stuff is in the top stories section of the Substack, or if you signed up for the homework, you get the homework. It's the same thing. In that document, it's free. I just need you to read it. It's a New York Times article, and I understand that the New York Times is behind a paywall, and a lot of people don't have access to the New York Times, okay? But it is there if you so choose to read it, okay? It's long. It's a long thing. But the entire thing tells you how the Republican strategist, the Republican Party in this country, has carefully planned all of this, from the gerrymandering all the way to the end of to see the crime and the shooting of each other. This serves their purpose, and their purpose is to have an autocratic society. Think of them as modern day Leninists, okay? This is real. And you say to me, oh, this is science fiction. Well, you said that when I talked about Dobbs. You said, stop talking about it because that's never going to happen. This is America. Well, it happened. And then I said, well, they're going to go after contraception. You said, stop talking about that. They're not going to go after contraception, but they will. And then you said, oh, well, they're not going to ban the right to travel to another state, so people will still be able to get in their cars. So what are you complaining about? Oh, no, Idaho doesn't want anybody leaving to go to Washington State, okay, to get a pill, which is only effective in early pregnancy. It's only good up till 10 weeks. That's early. That's first trimester stuff. That's what everyone says that they're for. But they don't want that either. So everybody is sitting there going, what is going on? And this 15-page article is telling you exactly what I've been telling you, except these people are credentialed. These people have a curriculum vitae. What? I know. I don't have one either. These people have the cred. I got street cred. They got educational cred. These are people whose entire lives are dedicated to looking at political systems, the value of democracy versus the value of autocracy versus the value of communism versus the value of socialism versus the value of democratic. So seriously, down in the nitty-gritty, looking at sociology and science and political science and all this. And they are all telling you the same thing, except in their perfect, grammatically correct way, because they're highly educated people. But this is their life's work. And in that weird way, it's mine too.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. This is the first item on the agenda for a special meeting this week of the Llano County, Texas Commissioners. A discussion about whether to continue or cease operations of the current physical Llano County library system.
Oh, my God.
Officials in Llano County, Texas, which is a community of about 22,000 people and is about 80 miles outside the state capital, they have been ordered by a federal judge to return about a dozen items that were removed from the county's library system after some citizens complained. Among them, books that cover race, LGBTQ matters, and puberty, including Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents, Isabel Wilkerson's examination of racism in America, Being Jazz, My Life as a Transgender Teen by Jazz Jennings, a book about the birth of the Ku Klux Klan, along with a handful of kids' books about farting, because that's all kids, or at least my kids, are interested in. 7 residents of Llano County sued county officials to get those books back on the shelves, complaining that defendants claim to be on a hunt to eradicate pornographic materials. This is a pretext. None of the books defendants have targeted is pornographic. Oh! Now, the case goes to trial in October, but the federal judge ordered the books back on the shelf in the meantime. At a meeting of the County Board of Commissioners this week, members of the public reportedly applauded after one woman said, if they insist on having the books, and if we don't win again, then just close down. After which the board decided to hold an emergency meeting this Thursday where they may just vote to shut all the libraries down in Llano County. So there is a very real possibility that a fight over about a dozen books may cause an entire community to lose access to every book.
Now, is that the number one thing on your list when you voted? Because you said that the number one thing on your list, Republicans, when you voted in the midterms, was crime and then inflation. Those were your things. I don't recall you saying anything at all about closing down libraries. And they're not alone. Missouri's doing it too.
Public libraries across Missouri could soon lose more than just books.
couple places around the U.S. right now, some libraries have shut down. Libraries have closed because they just don't have funding and because of laws like this.
Joe Colburn with the Missouri Library Association says a new proposed budget that would cut millions from state libraries will do more harm than good.
That's going to mean less, quality or less extensive collections, less extensive programming, sometimes shorter library hours.
The budget proposal goes back to Missouri law passed last August. It requires that books deemed explicit, just like these, are pulled from library shelves.
It ended up being like a graphic novel or something that maybe had nudity in it would be an example of something that could be objectionable.
Republican Senator Rick Bratton created the amendment targeting these books.
We want kids to be able to read books that allow them different perspectives, but at the same time, protecting their innocence. And we have a moral obligation to do that.
But Colburn says there's something to note when thinking about cutting public library funding.
We don't get state funding. We don't get any money from the state. We're a membership organization.
He says the lawsuit is simply about people standing up for personal and professional beliefs. And he worries the impacts will target parts of the state that need libraries most.
A lot of the folks whose representatives in the state house voted for this bill are the people who are going to be most impacted by not having access to as many library programs.
They don't even know who their representatives are that voted last August to shut down their rural library, where people might go to actually get books for free. Now, when we went to the break, I was just apologizing to you because I included in the homework today, in the top news stories today, a New York Times article that's behind a paywall because that's how the New York Times supports itself, right? Well, our producer, Sean, decided that he has the ability to gift New York Times articles. And so he went and amended today's homework so that you can get that article for free. That's what the libraries are there for, too. The libraries will allow you to read newspapers for free. The libraries will allow you to read books for free. The libraries allow you to have internet access. And you can't, people say, well, why don't the kids just read the internet? I mean, it's on an app, why don't they just, because it ain't free. It's not free. You can't read books for free. Okay? You can read certain stuff for free and then other stuff you can't. And books have authors who write for a living. And so books are not free. You understand that? But in the library they are. The internet in the library is free too. You know what else the library does? Sometimes the library actually has pre-K. Sometimes the library actually provides childcare. Sometimes the library actually is a senior center. Sometimes the library actually helps seniors apply for things like Social Security, which can be confusing, or apply for things like Medicare, which could be confusing. All that goes away, and all of that is free. And these Republicans, honestly, do not want you to be able to figure your way out of this doom loop that they have planned for you. I mean, that is just a fact. So in this New York Times article, which now you can read for free on randyrhodes.substack.com or randyrhodes.com on the homework section, free, okay? And you can click on it, and you will not get a paywall. Thank you, Sean. There is an observer. There are a lot of observers of American politics in this particular article. This woman, her name is Theda Skopel. She is a professor of political science and sociology at Harvard. And she said that many of the developments in states controlled by Republicans are a result of careful long-term planning by conservative strategists, particularly those in the Federalist Society who are developing tools to build minority authoritarianism. I think I've said this to you about 1 billion times, but here she's saying it, to build minority authoritarianism within the context of a nominally democratic system of government. What does a nominally democratic system of government, say? What does that look like? It looks like Russia. That's what it looks like. It looks like, oh, they have elections, but it doesn't matter because Vlad's going to win 98%, and he's going to arrest anybody that dares to run against him or poison them, or anybody that speaks out against him. They're going to fall out of a window, or a piano's going to fall on them, or suddenly their face is going to peel off, right? That's a nominally democratic system. He claims Russia is a democracy. You know that. We have elections. Yeah. And then she outlined her thinking. This is what you need to hear from her and me. I don't want to interrupt her thought. I'm going to do it on the other side of the break. But I'm telling you, it's on. This is happening. And it's accelerating now. Why? Because the gerrymandering is complete. The gerrymandering of what they would call a ruby red state is only a ruby red state, not because there are unlike-minded people living in it. We just saw, 40 people on the city council in Nashville, okay? You just saw them, and that was Democrats and Republicans voting to right a wrong, voting to respect the election results, voting to put Justin Jones back in his House seat because he won a free and fair election there. Same thing today in Memphis, okay? There are Republicans and Democrats in Memphis. They just voted to put Justin Pearson back.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show.
To
speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
All right, so I want to show you what Theda Skocpol. I've never heard of her, before. Why should I? I never went to Harvard, but she is a professor of political science and sociology at Harvard, and she's trying to tell you that they are building a minority authoritarian system of government within the context of a nominally democratic system, meaning, oh yeah, we'll say we're having elections, but it really won't matter, and that's where Harper, Moore versus Harper comes in. I'm telling you, this is a Supreme Court case that is live, and it's going to happen, and there will be a decision in it, and it has to do with the legislature of these gerrymandered states choosing the winner of your state's electoral slate. Okay, so here's what she said. The first movers who figured out how to configure this new laboratory of democratic constriction. God, I love Harvard. Like I said, grammatically correct, and the words are just beautiful. The first movers who figured out how to configure this new laboratory of democratic constriction were legal eagles in the Federalist Society and beyond, because the key structural dynamic in the current GOP gallop toward minority authoritarianism is the mutual interlock between post-2010 Republican control, often supermajority control, of dozens of state legislatures, and the Supreme Court decision in 2019 to allow even the most extreme and bizarre forms of partisan gerrymandering. These organized, richly resourced actors have figured out how to rig the current U.S. system of federalism and divided branches, given generational and geographic realities on the ground. And in the many ways, the fluky 2016 presidential election gave them what they needed to put the interlock in place. They are stoking and using the fears and resentments of about half or so of the GOP's popular base. Half or so of the GOP. Half or so of that. Okay, so half of the 30%. They are stoking and using the fears and resentments of about half or so of the GOP popular base to undo American democracy and enhance their own power and privileges. And they're doing it because they can. And they believe in what they're doing. They are America's GOP Leninists. This situation, locked in place by a corruptly installed Supreme Court majority and by many rotten borough judicial districts like the one in Amarillo, means that minority authoritarians behind a bare facade of constitutionalism can render majority elected officials, including the president and many governors, officials in name only. The great thing from the minority authoritarian point of view is that those visible chief executives, urban mayors, and district attorneys can still be blamed for government non-function and societal problems, but they won't be able to address them with even broadly supported measures such as simple background checks for having military assault weapons. So the people that are Democratic or Democrats, like the two representatives in Tennessee, okay, or like the Supreme Court justice that you just elected in Wisconsin, if it doesn't work out for you, you can blame them because they're visible and they have D's after their name, but they will be left without any tools in the toolbox to fix whatever's broken because the supermajorities will impeach them or expel them for doing so. And here's why they're doing it, according to the big brains in this country. Because they can. This is really what is going on in this country. The Republican Party never really, in modern times, had a commitment to democratic values or to democratic procedures, which is what we showed you in the legislatures, the state legislatures today. They don't really have a commitment to democracy, and they don't have a commitment to their own state constitutions or ours. Okay, they really aren't committed to it. And they have been, over the last 20 years, steadily eroding the adherence to those constitutions and to those procedures. And because they have all decided as a group of Republicans, elected Republicans, gerrymandered elected Republicans, but elected Republicans, as a group, they have all decided that they don't have to observe subpoenas. Jim Jordan, okay, I'm not even talking about it because it's so bizarre. Jim Jordan was subpoenaed by Congress. He ignored the subpoena. Nothing happened to him. Now Jim Jordan wants to subpoena Alvin Bragg, a man who he has no jurisdiction over because Alvin Bragg is a local district attorney and Jim Jordan is a federal, House member, okay? And he has no jurisdiction over him, but he's subpoenaing him too, okay? And, God forbid Bragg doesn't show up or sues him back and says, you have no jurisdiction over me. There's going to be a big, battle in conservative media. I'm not going there because it makes no sense to me. It's just a nonsense thing. It's just bull crap. Just like shutting down the libraries. This is a bull crap issue. Just like bathrooms. That's a bull crap issue. Just like, the abortion thing was a bull crap issue, except now it's real. And I'm telling you, there's a case that's coming called Moore v. Harper. Moore v. Harper is a case in front of the United States Supreme Court that actually puts the seal on the deal of anti-democratic values. That actually makes this an authoritarian place to live, right? Because what it does is it says that state legislatures can determine the winners and losers of elections. That's it. Now, you could get all Harvard-y and all Yale-like, you could get all Stanford-y, you can get all law school-y on it, but basically at the heart of Moore v. Harper is a theory called the independent state legislature theory, or doctrine is what they'll call it, because it sounds more like it's a thing. It's not a thing, it's a theory. And in this theory, they say that the state legislators have the ability to override the will of the people because the state legislators choose the manner in which the electors are selected. And if the legislatures, the gerrymandered ones, the supermajority ones, decide that they want to pick the winner of the election, then they should be able to. That's what Moore v. Harper is. And they want to be able to overturn election results. I will tell you, first and foremost, the Republicans do not have a commitment to democracy. They have demonstrated that in every way that they could show it to you. Every way. People are starting to get it. People are starting to get upset in their own states, which is good because all politics is local. So it's good that the state people are starting to see that their states are getting way corrupt and that they are violative of what the majority in that state wish to have as law under which they live. Okay. So forget about the federal constitution and the violation of it. They don't respect governance. They don't respect procedure. They don't respect subpoenas. They don't respect the law. And we know that. So here you have an acceleration of undemocratic things in state houses. And in the bright red states, they have decided to embrace far right positions. Like I showed you, there is no support for no background checks in this country. It's 98% support for background checks, okay? 79% of Republicans support exceptions to abortion for rape and incest at early stages. That is not happening in all the states I mentioned earlier, okay? So they don't respect the people's position on abortion. They don't respect people's position on guns. They don't respect people's position on election results, okay? And now saying that you don't respect democratic governance, saying that you don't respect the right of a woman to have privacy in her own person, saying that you don't support background checks, saying that you don't support the results of a free and fair election isn't even a choice for GOP candidates. It's a requirement. It's a requirement. And they are saying it out loud, and they are showing you that they will do it. Why? Because of the primary system. Now, in states like Pennsylvania, swing states like Wisconsin, it might be a liability, but it's still mandatory in the primaries. And because that's the case, there is a drive to empower the gerrymandered state legislatures where there are supermajorities or just plain majorities to overturn election results. And that would be the final destruction of democracy. You think about this.